And that's the solution to these problems here. The solution to the problem is sitting down and trying to work through them without reacting, without anger, without these negative emotions that comes out at us today more so than they ever have done before. When we talk about reputational damages, Robert, we talk about this is the one area that's impacting a lot of because we all want to be heard. We all want to be recognized. We all want to matter today. We want to walk through our association and with pride. But if all of a sudden somebody starts pointing out to us that it's our fault, then all of a sudden we're not prideful anymore. We feel we were damaged. And we feel damaged to the tune of whatever the amount of money we feel we're damaged to.
HOA Insights, common sense for common areas, exists to help all 2 million volunteer board members nationwide have the right information at the right time to make the right decisions for their future. This podcast is sponsored by 4 companies that care about board members: Association Insights and Marketplace, Association Reserves, Community Financials, and Kevin Davis Insurance Services. You'll find links to their websites and social media in the show notes.
Hi, I'm Robert Nordland of Association Reserves.
I'm Kevin Davis of Kevin Davis Insurance Services, and this is HOA Insights, where we promote common sense
for common areas. Well, welcome to episode number 36, where we'll be speaking with insurance expert and regular co-host Kevin Davis to talk about some examples of the things you can do to prevent a big insurance claim at your association. But before we get going, I want to encourage everyone to check out episode number 35, which was another popular board hero episode, a story of a board member serving on a dysfunctional board. Parts of that episode might, unfortunately, sound familiar to many of you. If you missed any other prior episodes, take a moment after the end of this program to subscribe to this podcast on any of the most popular podcast platforms. You can also listen from our podcast website, www.hoainsights.org, or watch on our YouTube channel. And if you have a hot topic, a crazy story, or a question you'd like to have us address, leave us a voicemail at 805-203-3130, or send us an email at podcast@reservestudy.com. So, Kevin, has become our habit, let's start today's program with an audience question. And this is from Fred in Austin, Texas. 2 of our owners, neighbors, have a long-standing disagreement about noise. They don't really like each other. It's getting heated. Is that an association liability problem?
It's a huge problem for the associations because right now, noise has developed into one of the big problems out there with pickleball.
Oh, good point.
Pickleball makes a lot of noise out there. And everybody's expanding association by putting these courts out there, and they're noisy. Also, you want to expand some of the common areas, so they put child lots out there. They're noisy also. And guess what? We're living in a time now where everything bothers us. Elevators are making a lot more. It's not that they're making a lot more noise, but people are noticing the noise that elevators make.
The bing.
Yeah.
And the door's closing.
The door closing, opening. So right now, it's becoming a problem. Now, from an insurance point of view, this is the most important part of it, is that a lot of insurance policies says that noise is a pollutant and is not covered under your insurance policy.
So know what you are and aren't covered by.
Yeah, exactly. So noise is a problem in community associations as long as you talk to your insurance professional. And again, we always talk about community association is unique. It's a unique world we live in, okay? Because you have a property manager, you have board of directors who are volunteers, and they rely on professionals. You have to have a professional who focuses in on community associations because they understand that noise is a big problem. Because you have people with hardwood floors who wants that specialized without the soundproofing. People have children. So we see noise as a problem. Exactly. At our feet. And so you have to make sure that if you have an insurance policy, that noise is not a pollutant under that insurance policy. Because it's not covered under your insurance policy.
Got it. Okay. Well, yeah, there's so many. I'm so glad we have you on the program. I want to pull back something. Last time we spoke, episode 32 by my notes, you spoke about reputational damage. And the topic we want to, or the title of today is avoiding a $1 million insurance claim. Can you kind of open the door, tell us a story about a real case that resulted in a big award, and what can we learn from that?
Reputational damages. And just to remind everybody that loss of excellent standing in my community is reputational damages. I've lived in a community association. I could walk through. I have pride. I'm a board member. I'm a past board member. And I could walk through with pride. But because of the way I'm being treated today, reputational damages comes into play. So that's reputational damages. Okay. So now here's a situation where we have a former board member or is looking for $1 million and a letter of apology to be read at a board meeting. He's suing because he libel, slander, intentional infliction of emotional distress, all these different things, because the current board said he was self-dealing, unlawful enrichment, and he acted in his own interest, not in the interest of the association.
So the current board is blaming all the problems of today on the
past board member.
Got it.
Okay. So now I am the past board member who now is filing a lawsuit against the current board.
Yeah, because people are saying, we heard what you did 5 years ago, and they're walking around you in the hallway or blaming all sorts of problems on you.
Exactly. And this is a situation here, is that the past board member, and I'm proud of what I did. What I did, the most important thing I did when I was on the board was repair the south-facing porches, because south-facing porches were destroyed by the sun. And I took a special assessment up, and we agreed as the board to do the south-facing porches only. Now, 5 years later, guess what happens? They don't like the south-facing porches look better than all the other porches down there, and they blame me. They think I'm the one that's incompetent. I'm the one that did a bad job. I'm the one who wasn't worthy. I'm the one. And so now I'm upset.
Wait. Did you also have a south-facing unit, and so you got one of the new ones?
Yes. All of a sudden, unlawful enrichment says that I was the one. Now my unit is worth a lot more than everybody else's unit.
It was coincidence, but it's unfortunate coincidence.
Unfortunate coincidence that would happen.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden, I'm looking around the association and saying that current board up there, they're not doing their job. They're not enforcing the rules. They're not doing the thing they should be doing. People parking in visitors parking. The pool hours not being kept right. I want to get back on the board of directors, because when I was on the board of directors, guess what we did? We took care of business.
Yeah. And the east, the west, and the north balconies are deteriorating, and they need my expertise to help get another special assessment to get those done.
Exactly, because the current board refused to do what they should be doing. So I take pride in, so I'm walking around the association, and that current board of directors is blaming me for all the problems this new board is facing. Because now, guess what? They have to replace all the other porches that were, because now they've deteriorated to the point where, you can't have uneven in the association. So now I'm the one that they're saying is incompetent, didn't know what he was doing, and unlawful, and of all things that I acted in my own interest, because now my association might be worth a little bit more, my unit may be worth a little bit more than everybody else's unit. So now here we have a perfect misunderstanding that can happen in any association, right? Because you can have a board of directors who did their job back then, now a current board who disagreed with what that old board has done. And you can put anything in there, special assessment, parking, rules. The old board feels entitled because he thought he did a good job. The new board says, no, unlawful enrichment. You didn't know what you were doing. You acted in your own self-interest. All these different words that are buzzwords that says, reputational damages. I've been damaged. And remember, when we talk about reputational damages, there's 4 things has to happen, for me to have suffered damages: libel, slander, defamation. Okay? Number 1, I have to be accused of committing a crime. I have to be accused of having some kind of infectious disease, like remember when we had COVID. If you blame somebody saying somebody had COVID, that's a no-no. Okay? You have to have lack of integrity or competence, and engage in inappropriate sexual conduct. Those are the 4 things that says I can hold them accountable, okay, for reputational damages.
That's a busy week for somebody.
But guess what? We live in community associations, and we've heard about all these different things that board of directors have accused other people of doing, and other people have accused board members of doing. And that's the problem with reputational damages. Here I am, board of directors did this great job of taking a special assessment. Instead of repairing everybody's porches, I only replaced the ones that were damaged. Okay. 5 years later, okay, was that the best plan of action?
That's a good question. On one hand, physically, it was only the south ones that needed it, and money's always tight, and so you phased it into south ones first. We'll do the other ones later. Arguably a good plan, but you need a follow-up plan. You need phase 2 or phase 2, 3, 4. Then we get into disagreements. Okay.
Yes. And that's what the problem is now. In the world we live in now, again, 5 years ago, we had this disagreement. We probably could sit down and work it out and go, you're right. Let's now start working on other phases. Let's do the north, the east, the west. We could pass special assessment. But our goal is to make sure the community association look and feel better so that we all can feel good in our community. That was 5 years ago. Today, guess what? Now we blame, we criticize, we judge, right?
You're just talking about the human dynamics of it.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it. So instead of us working together as a team to figure out what the plan is, we judge, we blame, and we criticize. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm saying that current board is incompetent, that current board, doesn't know what they're doing. They should have repaired the other porches a long time ago. I set a plan up in place to do it, and they didn't listen to me. Now, 5 years later, they're blaming me because we didn't do the job that was necessary, and the current board is the one that really should be handling the job properly. So I'm really upset because I'm being mistreated. I'm not being heard, and I'm being damaged. I want $1 million in a letter of apology. Okay, so now all of a sudden, the board president gets the summons and complaint, a lawsuit. Now, the first thing he does is a smart thing. He goes to his lawyer and says, what do I do now? And he calls the insurance agent and says, insurance, guess what? We have a lawsuit against a prior board member suing the current board member, saying that, unjust enrichment, he acted outside of his interests. So will you please handle the lawsuit for us? I'm the insurance provider. I look at this thing. I see 3 concerns right off the bat. There's $1 million judgment they're looking for. $1 million in damages and a letter of apology. So as far as I'm concerned, do I see $1 million in damages out there? First question is this. I have the current board of directors being sued by a past board member. When you buy an insurance policy, that's on behalf of the insured, which is the board of directors. So this is the issue here. You, Robert, you live in your home. You have a nice home, and you have a beautiful wife who I've met. Now, all of a sudden, she's not happy with you because all of a sudden she looks at Zillow to find out the value of your unit the value of your home has diminished by $100,000. Okay. And guess whose fault it is, Robert?
Because it's probably mine.
Of course it's your fault.
Yeah.
Because you didn't paint when she asked you to paint. You didn't take the trash out. You didn't get the landscaper in. So now all of a sudden she looks to you and say, Robert, because of you, we lost $100,000 in our home. You got to work harder now, Robert, to make sure that we take.
Can we remind the audience that this is the hypothetical situation? Okay. All right.
And now your wife can sue you, but now from an insurance point of view, we just say you bought an insurance policy on behalf of your home. You and your wife are covered under that policy if a third party sues you. So now if a third party comes in and says, I've been damaged because I came in and slipped and fell on your property, that's why. It doesn't cover you. Well, it's the same problem in the condo. We had that first board member, the past board member is suing that current board member. It's like your wife is suing you. So that's the first thing. And that's the major problem right off the bat is that you got one party is suing the other party for $1 million who both belong to the same policy.
So board member, there was obviously a slice of time in between.
Exactly. Let's say you were divorced from your wife. And now your wife looked at Zillow and said, whoa, wait a minute now. We've been divorced 5 years ago. 5 years ago, our home was worth $1.2 million. Now they worth $1 million because you did a bad job.
That lousy scoundrel. That's one more on the long list of things that I hated about him. Okay.
Exactly. It's the same principle. You still bought the policy for you because you are living in there. It's your policy. It's the homeowner's policy. Now, even though you're divorced, or separated, he's separated, you're still suing in capacity as that husband who screwed up. And that's the same thing. It's the capacity. If the board would have sued the other person, not in a capacity as a board member, but just as a guy living in there and said, I don't like what's being done. Different ball game.
Got it. Okay, because then he's an outside party. He's a homeowner or a neighbor who says this community association used to be a nice place. It used to be a nice neighbor, and now it's just a slum, and it is bringing my home values down.
Exactly. In fact, a perfect example is the two people before who fought over the noise. Now, all of a sudden, if one of those people was a past board member who got upset and he wanted to come back on the board to make all these changes, now you're talking about a whole different story there. So,
okay, well, Kevin, my brain is spinning. This is a good point. So let's be right back after a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors.
Is your HOA or condo self-managed and you don't want to work as hard volunteering? Are you full managed and looking to save money? Or are you looking to split the accounting from a manager's role for better service? Let Community Financials handle the monthly accounting for you. We collect dues, pay bills, produce financial reports, include portals, and help with other support services, all while providing awesome service. We love the opportunity to help you make your community accounting stress-free with our industry-leading systems and expert team. Visit our website, communityfinancials.com, to learn more.
And we're back. Well, Kevin, we were talking about this situation, and you talked about there was three things. And the first thing that we were talking about was in your illustration of my wife and I, which you were not listening on the telephone. It was a hypothetical. You can't sue yourself. That's a complication. Insurance is not the answer. So what were the other two?
Okay.
There was three issues.
So the second one is defamation. Okay, we see there's defamation and libel and slander, loss of my standing in the community. So was he really defamed? In other words, we're talking about unlawful enrichment. We're talking about enacting his best interests. So we talk about a misunderstanding there. So we're looking at a situation where, okay, from an insurance point of view, it's a misunderstanding. He didn't go out there. There's no documentation there. So the difference between libel and slander, libel, if there's written down, if it's in writing, then we have a problem. But if it's just slander or words that were heard, then I'm saying that, okay, it may not cost that much money. Maybe we can settle it for a lot less than $1 million. The third thing is we're looking at things like intentional infliction of emotional distress, willful and wanted acts, okay? Those were also said in the complaint. When we see things like intentional and willful, we don't insure those at all.
There we go. It comes back to insurance is for accidents, not for willful. If I take my car and I am angry and I ram it into something, that's not an accident. That's a willful act.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And don't forget, and we talk about reputational damages, you committed a crime. You have sex, you've done these things you shouldn't have done. Some of these things can be willful, and you talk about intentional. Now, what we know right now, what we've heard, this is kind of a misunderstanding but we don't know the whole story, but I feel comfortable from an insurance point of view, but I will also reserve my right if I am wrong. So what will happen is that I'll send the board a letter that says, guess what? We will provide a defense, but we may not pick up intentional acts, willful and wanted acts. So at the end of the day, that $1 million suit out there, we know right now we may only pick up $500,000 of it.
Because it was a willful act. It wasn't an accident.
Yeah. So what we may do is go to the board and say, guess what, board? Because it's willful, because it's intentional, you acted outside the scope, you were intentional, we will kick in $250,000, $300,000, but you, board, have to pay the other $700,000 to get to that amount.
Ouch.
Yes.
And is that a personal obligation or is that on the association and special assessment time?
It depends. It's hard to say. If it's intentional, because it could be intentional for maybe 2 or 3 board members, this is all of a sudden now it's the judge time, and it could be the insurer's time to say, listen, what we're going to do to get this thing out of the way, before even the judgment comes in, you kick in some money and we'll kick in some money and we'll settle it for $700,000, not for the $1 million they want, as long as you do that letter of apology. So this negotiation part between the insurance provider and the board of directors, because you were intentional, willful, let's not go to court. We don't want to go to a jury
Because that gets even more expensive.
It gets even worse. You're talking about punitive damages. You're talking about a lot of different things. However, in this situation here, we'll probably come in and say, listen, from what we've heard so far, we don't think it really raised to the level of something that's really intentional, that bad, because it's a misunderstanding. He wanted to be on the board. You did some things, but it could have happened because of routine. I mean, he wanted the proxies, and he didn't get the proxies in a timely manner. We hear that a lot. Election disputes happens a lot of times. So we're going to back you up on this one, but we're going to also send you a note saying we may not, if that thing goes to trial and find out there's intentionality there.
Got it. Intentionality is a big deal. And if they were the ones misbehaving, it keeps coming back to misbehaving, behavior. And you spoke about that earlier, where it's a matter of, is it loss of tolerance? Is it loss of patience? And is this the COVID has just changed the way we're dealing with each other?
Yeah, we react, and that's the problem. Instead of taking a step back, taking a breath, we react to everything. So now all of a sudden, this person who I believed made a bad decision by only doing the self-facing porches, now he wants to get back on the board, and he was wrong then, he's wrong now. Why do I want him on my board? And we've talked about it, and we had discussion about it in our board meeting, and I don't know how it got out. Now I got out that, I accused him of all these different things, and I didn't really mean to accuse him of all these different things, but his values unit is worth more than it was before, worth more than mine. So I don't believe that's right. I believe that's wrong. So now, again, it goes back to that communication. 5 years ago, we could sit down and talk to each other. Today, I'm going to blame you because of my problems. The current board is saying, if you would have did your job 5 years ago and replaced all the porches, I would not be in a situation today.
Yeah. But this board member is saying, hey, 5 years ago, we had no money and we could only afford south-facing, and they were the worst ones. Yes, I had a south-facing unit, and so yes, one of my unit got done, but you guys forget that south-facing porches were in bad shape, and I would just love to help you with my experience, get the north, east, and west ones going. So
that's perfect, and that's the solution to these problems here. The solution to the problem is sitting down and trying to work through them without reacting, without anger, without these negative emotions that comes out at us today more so than they ever have done before. When we talk about reputational damages, Robert, we talk about this is the one area that's impacting a lot of, because we all want to be heard. We all want to be recognized. We all want to matter today. We want to walk through our associations and with pride. But if all of a sudden somebody starts pointing out to us that it's our fault, then all of a sudden we're not prideful anymore. We feel we were damaged, and we feel damaged to the tune of whatever the amount of money we feel we're damaged to.
Yeah. Well, I get defensive. If it's a misunderstanding, it's a misunderstanding. But if someone is accusing me, I'm going to feel hurt. I'm going to feel harmed. And I'm going to talk to my wife about it. And she's going to say, should we talk about an attorney? And then it just escalates.
Especially when you use the word unjust enrichment, because it wasn't like that he hid the fact that he was living there. They knew from day one that he was living there, and they all agreed that this is the decision we're going to make. It's different if all of a sudden you find out years later that, oh, well, guess what? He never admitted that he was living there. Again, when it comes to things like conflict of interest, you just say, guess what? I live in one of the south-facing porches, and my porch was damaged more so than anybody else. Maybe with a corner where the sun shines more than anybody else's. So you disclose that from the beginning. And he said he disclosed it from the beginning. So all of a sudden, he's now more angry than he was before because he disclosed it. He knew that people come after him later on, and he disclosed it. But again, 5 years later, nobody remembers the disclosure. Nobody remembers the things that he did.
Yeah, Kevin, in my world, it so often happens. We're doing the reserve study, and it's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And phase 1 is older, and it needs to get painted first. And coincidentally, of course, 2 of the board members live in phase 1, and it hurts them to say the truth. And the truth is phase 1 needs to get painted. And yes, I live there, but we don't have enough money to paint everything and get everything on the same schedule. So let's paint phase 1 this year. And maybe this is one of the keys, let's paint phase 2 next year, phase 3 the year after, and put a plan together so they're clearly working for the association, not for themselves. Is that part of the solution?
That's definitely part of the solution. And his solution, the person who's filing a lawsuit, from his point of view, he outlined these things. And again, it's the current board of directors who failed, not only didn't listen to the other board member, but he's the one to put that fence up. You know how instead of communicating, that wall goes up? Then what they're talking about, the they thing, they are the bad guys and I'm the good guys. If he would have took time out and said, let's sit down and talk about this, because it's not that I'm agreeing with you, but we need to hear you out. And let's have a board meeting and decide. And he wanted to come back on the board. Let's invite him on back on the board, or say, guess what? Right now we have no positions available, but guess what? We want you to run for the board. We want you to come back to the board. So it is now a decision from the board of directors to say, guess what? We have to stop reacting, take a step back and say, let's work together.
I like that. Civility. Kevin, we've started hearing more from our podcast audience about the dysfunction at their associations. And I read through those emails, we listen to the voicemails, and there's some hard stories about what is and isn't going on, the bad things that are going on, the good things that are not going on. And I think you touched on it. So much of it is taking a step back, being civil about it. The board needs to listen, needs to think and say, hey, let's not make a fight out of this. And in this case, the prior board member not make a fight out of it. If they can find that middle ground and start working with each other, is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think from the board's fault, the board has to be able to learn that words matter. And one of the words that's more important is that old board was incompetent. They stole money. You know, when you start saying things like they lack integrity, those are the things are, quote, fighting words that they say. You know, those are words that cross the line between not only civility, but that's when you can be held responsible. So you take a step back and go, okay, you know how easy it is for people to say, not only that, but I heard he's having sex with the manager too.
Oh,
you know?
Gee.
You know, I mean, it's what happens in boards of directors, right? And I heard this and I heard that. That's what creates the problem in these community associations. I heard that. Guess what? You know what? The reserve account is a lot lower than it should be. I heard that, he has a new car now.
Ouch. Ouch.
Yes. And these are the things that matter. These are things that matter more so than other things. We get mad and judge people for not, mowing the lawn or, the things that we get mad at, our wives get mad at us about because things we haven't done. But there's a line that they don't cross, Once we seem to cross that line more and more today because of that anger that's built up. There's a low-level depression that goes throughout these community associations. We have to recognize it and say, let's not react. Let's take a deep breath and say, all right, what's going on? Let's spend a few minutes and let me hear your issues. Let me hear you, because at the end of the day, we all want to matter. We all want to be heard. And if we do that, guess what would happen? There would never have been $1 million lawsuit, and it never would have been a letter of apology, because I would have been heard and things would have been okay.
Yeah. Well, again, one thing that's the lights flashing in my brain is they were not focusing on the community or the needs of the community. The prior board member was thinking, I want to do these I want to do these good things for the association. I want to help. But the current board was blaming rather than saying, oh, gee, yes, we could use his help. We don't live in a perfect world. There's going to be minor mistakes. You use the word perfect misunderstanding. But if we can focus on the community, what does the community need to move forward rather than blaming the past, rather than blaming the current?
We have to watch out for blaming, judging, and criticizing. There's the three things that we do. We do instinctively to protect ourselves. We protect ourselves automatically when somebody comes after us. We want to protect ourselves and not take a step back and listen. We need to take a step back and listen.
Okay. Well, words matter. Kevin, fantastic. Great time spent with you. Any closing thoughts to add as a wrap up?
Behavior. We have to understand that a lot of these $1 million lawsuits that we're going to be talking about over the next several months has to do with behavior. Not because of an accident, not because your roof is leaking or because your storm blew away or because it is because of behavior. If we can change behavior, guess what we can do? Lower the cost of your insurance. We can lower the temperature in these associations. We can really make a big difference not only in your life, but we can save some time and save money and all resources. So we have to be able to communicate it more effectively and make sure people are being heard, because at the end of the day, they want to matter and we all want to be heard.
I like that.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you, Kevin. Well, we hope you learned some HOA insights from our discussion today that helps you bring common sense to your common area. Look forward to another great episode next week.
You've been listening to HOA Insights, common sense for common areas. You can listen to the show on our podcast website, hoainsights.org, or subscribe on any of the most popular podcast platforms. You can also watch the show on our YouTube channel. Check the show notes for helpful links. If you like the show and want to support the work we do, you can do so in a number of ways. The most important thing you can do is to engage in the conversation. Email your questions or voice memos to podcast@reservestudy.com or leave us a voicemail at 805-203-3130. If you gain any insights from the show, please do us a huge favor by sharing the show with other board members you know. You can also support us by supporting the brands that sponsor this program. Please remember that the views and opinions expressed by the podcast do not constitute legal advice. You'll want to consult your own legal counsel before making any important decisions. Finally, this podcast was expertly mixed and mastered by Stokelight Video and Marketing. With Stokelight on your team, you'll reach more customers with marketing expertise that inspires action. See the show notes to connect with Stokelight.